It is my belief that things don't just happen by chance, but by proper planning. Do you have a retirement plan or simply have an investment portfolio that can use some fresh ideas? Hi, my name is Mike Ecker, and my podcast is called Investment Choices. In my podcast, I will be speaking with professionals who will be discussing alternative investment ideas that may be a good fit for your financial plans. There is more to investing than just stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Hi, this is Mike Ecker. Welcome to my podcast, Investment Choices Other Than Stocks, Bonds, and Mutual Funds. Today, my guest is Bill Boscow. Bill has served in the retirement planning asset management industry for over 35 years. During his career, he served in various sales, marketing, and management roles for Morningstar, Lincoln Retirement, The Prudential, River Sources, and Ameriprise. Bill, thanks for being with me today.
Mike, thank you.
I wanted to we're talking about senior housing, senior care, and I guess one of the statistics I'm going to start with, Bill, you mentioned something that's really interesting about people falling. Can you just repeat that for me?
Well, Mike, the statistic is as follows. For those that are age 65 and over, one of the leading cause of death is simply falling. In that for seniors, once a fall occurs, and I'm sure that you, and for that matter, those that are looking at or listening into the podcast can relate to the fact that they know of somebody that has fallen. And at that point, it becomes a situation where the person is inactive, and that ultimately could lead to that person passing away.
Yeah, you always hear about somebody falling, breaking a hip, getting pneumonia, and everything deteriorates from there.
Exactly.
And that leads us into the care facilities. The senior care has a number of different facilities. It starts with where they want assisted living. What is assisted living, Bill?
Well, assisted living is really, the name is very, very descriptive. It's for individuals that are at a point in their life where they require some form of assistance, Mike. And there's an acronym that's often referred to in the industry, ADL. ADL stands for Activities of Daily Living. And usually it's the case where an individual is at a point in their life where they need help with usually 2 or 3 at least activities of daily living. Now, activities of daily living are defined as such a thing as toileting, getting dressed, eating, that sort of thing. So somehow, some way, the individual needs assistance, and that's where assisted living communities can really be of great benefit to that person.
Do people plan? I mean, I know that we have long-term care. How does long-term care come into effect if somebody falls and breaks a hip and they have to go into assisted living? Does that insurance take over?
It can, and I say it can, Mike, in that all long-term care policies are different. And it's important for those that own long-term care. First of all, that's great because it can really help take care of a really meaningful financial burden should somebody require long-term care. But typically, long-term care insurance, yes, can and is used to pay for assisted living expenses after a period has been satisfied, let's say 90 days. And then if the individual still requires care after 90 days, long-term care coverage would then begin to pay at least a portion of the costs for assisted living.
Is that like a nursing home where people go into a nursing home, or is that a different kind of facility?
Well, that's a great question, and it's oftentimes people think exactly what you just said, that assisted living is the same as almost a critical care skilled nursing facility, and that actually is not the case. Assisted living is meant for folks that are still active. However, they may need some assistance in terms of daily care, whether it be for medication. It could be that they're making use of a walker and they might need help transferring from their chair to their bed, toileting, that sort of thing. That being said, though, there is still a great deal of activity in an assisted living community, and that's in contrast to what it would truly be considered to be a critical care facility, skilled nursing critical care facility that is meant more for folks that unfortunately they're at a point in their life where they're not able to be as active as they once were.
Well, before they get to that stage, let's say our parents they don't want to live by themselves anymore. They want to live in a community, not assisted living, I don't know what you would call it, where they can actually go to a facility and there are activities there for them to do. What kind of facility is that today?
Well, that could be something, let's say, is part of a continued care community. And within a continued care community, that community may offer, for example, a cottage setup for folks that are still quite independent. They might wish to have help in terms of around the house, as far as just basically keeping the house in good order. Yet, to your point, they really desire to have a higher degree of social interaction, and therefore choose to be part of a community, as opposed to, for example, staying in the house that they may have owned for many, many years. And it could be that they're in a situation where they are the sole occupant of that house. And while it's very difficult for many, many people to leave and decide to sell their house, most residents of senior communities would then tell you that, boy, they really enjoy being part of a community, having that social interaction. By the way, most likely eating better and eating on a more regular basis than if they were living alone. So there are a lot of benefits involved with becoming part of a senior living community.
So in other words, they've got their meals done for them. They have somebody cleaning for them. They have social activities there. And they're not in that house and don't have the responsibilities for that. So now they're actually in assisted living, not assisted living. What would you call that?
Well, I would call it, again, it's a senior living community,
okay.
But I would call it independent living. And for those that are involved with independent living, this would be, let's say, the form or the type of living that one would be involved with prior to assisted living. They might have some sort of home health care service where an individual would visit them on a periodic basis just to check in, that sort of thing. And then after their needs become a little more pronounced, that's when the individual may decide to become part of an assisted living community.
Well, I want to bring in the family factor. You know, when you have parents that are older, the children want to be involved, making sure that mom and dad, or mom, whatever the situation is, moves into a facility that's nice. It's not a house anymore. How do they shop around like they're looking for real estate and they're going to try to pick out a house? Do they pick out a facility with the different amenities, so to speak? How do the kids go about working with their parents on this?
Well, you just gave a very good description, and that to a large extent, it is just that. It's people they're shopping and comparing. They're comparing a number of different things. Number one, the quality of the facility itself. Number two, the level and the quality of care that's provided. Certainly, number three, the amenities, which start with the meal service and other activities that the resident would be able to have exposure to. But then, as well as you might guess, there's certainly the need to compare pricing in terms of senior care, and the type of care, and for that matter, the cost of care really can represent a very broad range depending upon the local market where a particular senior care community is located.
So let me ask you a question. So Florida would be different than New York. New York would be different than Georgia, depending on the expenses in those areas. So depending where you live, you have a choice. Everybody wants to be close to their family, but you want what's best for your family. A lot of these facilities I see that are coming up are really nice. What do some of these new facilities offer for families or parents that are going into them?
Sure.
You had mentioned food or something like that, and how does that work with the menu? They go in and they sit at a table and they have food there. What's happening there?
Well, certainly, and Mike, it depends upon the community and what their pricing structure might be. One example is there is a form of senior care called continued care, where in terms of the pricing and requirements and so forth, that would be one pricing structure. And then there's the other form of care would be more along the lines of renting an apartment. So there'd be a monthly apartment lease that would be renewed on an annual basis. Within or what does the fee cover in terms of the fee that the resident pays? Typically, it would cover a level of care that the individual is assessed and assumed to require. But to your point, it would also cover meal service. And meal service, thankfully, the industry has improved a lot in this regard. Meal service with many senior care communities nowadays involves really restaurant, white tablecloth service where or with a full wait staff as opposed to, let's say, more of a cafeteria style setup.
What is some of the amenities like you look at they play chess and checkers? I mean, what are the different things you could do at these facilities?
Well, as you might guess, certainly there's usually an active bingo group. But in addition to that, many care communities nowadays will have actual movie theaters, beautiful movie theaters, and specifically designed for the residents, meaning that the space between each row of seats is very, very wide to allow people easy entrance and access. Place within the theaters for those that are making use of a wheelchair to be comfortable, that sort of thing. In addition, the activities, while there are many that take place on site, entertainment and so forth, all sorts of performance groups coming in, there's oftentimes a very active schedule for offsite activities, whether it be to museums, depending upon the area, obviously, where the community is located, shopping centers, restaurants, that sort of thing. So very active, which really surprises a lot of, pleasantly so, surprises a lot of prospective residents and their families.
If somebody was to break a hip, like we started, fell down, what facility would they go into get rehabilitation in? Are they going into a nursing home, or where are they going to get rehabilitation?
Well, it certainly would depend upon the individual circumstances. But if someone were to fall, number one, just immediately, the very important is how soon is care provided. And that's one thing to look at within senior care communities, is to understand, hey, is there a registered nurse on staff, or would an RN be on call? And I would submit that is two totally different scenarios where a nurse would be available to attend to someone that may have fallen within a senior care community right away, versus waiting for that particular professional to arrive on site to assess what the situation is. But back to your question, when someone does suffer a fall, depending upon the severity of the injury, it could be that person will need hospitalization and then rehabilitation before they were to return either to their house, if they are still, a term that's often used is aging in place, or perhaps to the assisted living community.
So when you say aging in place, that brings to mind a situation where people actually get some home help, where somebody comes in for 6 hours or 4 hours a day or 3 hours, and that opposed to being into an assisted living. What's the benefits of, I guess there's no benefits if you're living alone and you're having somebody visit you, rather than being in an assisted living where you have other people around you to help you and take care of you in case there's an emergency?
Well, and you almost answered your own question there, Mike, in that it really depends upon the individual, their circumstances, but also to a certain extent what their desires may be. We find, as I mentioned earlier, most individuals, once they join a community, are really happy that they are once again part of a community, meeting people with similar backgrounds, or for that matter, meeting other people that had totally different backgrounds from depending upon what their life experiences have been. That being said, certainly there are individuals that are quite happy living still let's say it could be by themselves. They enjoy living in the house where they've lived in for many, many years. But that being said, a lot of those folks realize the benefits of having care on site right away. Not just to try to prevent a fall or something like that, but to make sure that medication is administered correctly, that there are 3 square meals a day, that sort of thing.
I guess going from that extreme to what I'm going to ask you now, and the other extreme is, today everybody hears about it and they hope it doesn't happen to them, is dementia, where
Yes.
the parent is starting to lose the memory, and concerned that they're going to go into a facility where they sit like a vegetable at a table waiting for the food to come or something like that. How are the facilities now geared up to handle people coming into the dementia area to compare to what it was years ago?
Sure. Well, first thing that I think deserves mentioning is not just from the perspective of the individual that might be afflicted with dementia or Alzheimer's, but also from the perspective of the loved ones. It is very difficult and very time consuming to provide the proper level and type of care to an individual that has memory impairment. That being said, in terms of memory care communities, thankfully, again, I believe the industry has progressed tremendously over the past 10, 20 years, in part because the senior care industry has a better understanding of the type of care and type of stimulation that a person with memory care issues may require. So in the case of memory care facilities, the configuration of the facilities has evolved to not only be of more flexible for the needs of the resident, but also to allow for better, more timely care to be administered by the associates that are employees of the facility.
I heard something about something with 8. The facility is set up in a certain way.
Oh, sure.
What is that called?
Yes, well, some memory care, and actually many memory care facilities, are learning that a figure 8, I think is what you're referring to, Mike.
Right.
And figure 8 is a configuration, just as you might imagine, where the floor of the memory care facility is laid out in the form of an 8, and that does a couple of things. Number one, it allows the residents to freely roam the facility without running the risk of either becoming lost, because the facility is kept in a secure environment for the residents. Number two, it allows the caretakers to more easily monitor the residents. So really, it accomplishes two things. Number one, a more appropriate level of care, and number two, a more active situation for the resident as they become part of that community.
Well, as you can see, as we're discussing, Bill and I, this is like financial planning almost. It's called financial family planning. Not so much as an investment, even though you do have to plan for the future. It's investing time with your parents, your mom, your dad, together or singly, to know that these situations are going to come about. And you have to plan early for them, not at the last minute. So you have to look into this, see the different aspects of what we're talking about. There are many different facilities out there today. I see them being built. You have options. Just like I say with my podcast, it's investment options beyond your stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Bill, I want to thank you. I mean, we could probably talk in this for the next hour or two, and I don't want to belabor the point. Bill, we have some information on the podcast for Bill and the company. If you have any further questions, again, this is Mike Ecker, investment options other than stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Thanks a lot and have a great day. Bill, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Mike.
Thank you for listening. Remember, things just don't happen when it comes to your financial future. This is Mike Ecker, and you've been listening to Investment Choices.